Hey everyone, welcome back. Dan Shields here. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about playing over dominant seventh chords and how we can play over dominant sevenths. Everybody knows dominant seventh chords, and especially in the context of the blues. So dominant seventh chords, just to talk through theoretically where they're at, and don't fade out on this, they normally act as a 5 chord in a key. So if I'm in the key of D, it would be D, E, F sharp minor, G, A7. And there's my 7th chord. Now in the blues, it's sort of a standalone chord. It's just, right? You hear that all the time. And sometimes it'll go to another standalone chord. So there's a couple of different approaches, and I'm going to take this. I'm going to sort of take this from the simplest to the more complex stuff. So the first thing that you can do that everybody does on a regular blues. So let's say I'm playing like I just recorded a little loop here. I can just do my regular pentatonic. Right? Everybody heard that. Alright, so that's a great sound and it works. The funny thing about that pentatonic though is in this dominant 7th chord, I have the note C sharp, but in my pentatonic chord, I get this. Now that does give you like a 7 sharp 9 chord, the Hendrix chord, and people hear that sound all the time. But if you notice, most of the good blues guys, if you hear all of the Clapton stuff, but even the like Muddy Waters and Lightning, people like that, almost every time they get to that, the Mike Bloomfields of the world, they're going to bend that note. So all of the time you hear the C note, it's going to be a C sharp. Or they'll do a little hammer on. So that sort of sound. All right, so good enough on that. So that's a sound that you've heard a lot. The other sound that you'll hear a lot of times people doing once you get to a slightly more sophisticated level. Oh, first of all, let me just back off. On this pentatonic, you can add a couple of notes. So you can add basically 3 notes to it. I can always add the B note. I can always add that F sharp note. And I can always add the blue note. And that's a really easy pattern to be able to play over top of. All right, so you hear those notes all work, and that's a really nice, easy pattern. All right, so the next thing that you can do then is you can start to incorporate really that C sharp note, and this is called a dominant pentatonic. So again, don't fade out on the names. The sounds are really easy, and you've heard this sound before. So instead of doing, I'm going to do, it's very Jeff Beck sounding, and a lot of times guys will slide up. They'll just take that regular pentatonic, and every time they hit that C note, so you hear that, that's a great sound. And the cool thing about that is if you're using the dominant pentatonic, so, if I just played, and I asked like, where am I at in the blues changes? Now you can probably hear there I'm on the 5 chord. But if I play this dominant pentatonic, and then I go up to the D, and I play a dominant pentatonic, back to the A. So if I did, you hear right away, I've gone to the 4 chord, and you can also play that dominant pentatonic right in position there. But it tells you that you know what change you're on. So if I, heard I've gone 5, 4, and back to the 1 chord there. So that really helps to set off the dominant pentatonic. So that's the next layer of sophistication. All right, the next thing that guys will do, and this is starting to get a little bit more into the jazz world, is they'll go with modal playing, and they'll just simply play a Mixolydian scale, which is just the D scale. Remember we talked about it's the 5 chord, and if you go back from the A, if you go all the way back to the 1 chord, that's the D chord. If I basically played my D major scale, but I went all the way down to there, that's my Mixolydian scale. So any of the D scale stuff, so like literally I'm playing Lydian there, I'm playing Mixolydian here, I'm playing Aeolian here, but it's all D. You hear that Mixolydian sound. So now that's getting really sophisticated sounding, very cool sounding. All right, now I'm going to go into some stuff that is going to get a little bit heavier. One of the things that Larry Carlton will do, he was a great studio session guy, one of the most recorded guys ever in history. He'll take like chords over top of chords. So if he's looking at this A7, so there's a couple different things that he'll do, but one of them is he'll split the voicings, and he might do like A7 like this, A7 like this, E minor 7 like this, G like that, A7, A7, or what is that, like a G chord, A7. So he might do something like this. Okay, and then he can take that same idea and he might just do like A to G, A to G. So maybe he would do something like this. G chord, A chord, G chord, A chord. Okay, you get that. And then I can also do G chord, or A chord, G chord inversion, and back to A. All right, another very cool idea. And again, all of these ideas, you want to like make your own loop or just pull up a backing track and just try to work these things. So on that one, just go from G to A to G to A to G to A to G to A. All right, this is going to get now more sophisticated. This is a Wes Montgomery trick. And again, I'm just putting out a whole bunch of stuff in one video. You could probably spend a lifetime on any of this stuff and never get to the bottom of it. But one thing that Wes Montgomery would do is he would take not just that G chord, but he would take a G major 7, right over top of the sound. So you hear how when I'm playing like regular bluesy, it sounds like really sophisticated all of a sudden. Then you come back out into a bluesy thing and it sounds really cool. All right, next idea. I can take, so I'm superimposing chords now at this point. So I'm going chord upon chord. I'm doing the 4 chord and the 5 chord. This G chord is very similar to my E minor chord. If you look, G chord, E minor chord. So I can play E minor chord sounds over this. And then I just have to resolve to one of the notes of that A chord. So let me try that. there's that G chord thing that I did then. All right, so you hear superimposing a chord over a chord is a really nice sound as well. And then I can take that idea and I can expand that idea a little bit. Anytime I've got, I can do the scale, any scale that I want, and anything that has a whole step in between it, I can put a chromatic tone in it. And then anything that's a half step, I can do only chord tones. So for instance, if I did, let me do it from the A Mixolydian, so you see how this works. I could do, so you notice the first two notes are a whole step, I fill it in. The next is a whole step, I fill that in, but then I'm at a half step, so I'm going to do what they call an encapsulation. That starts sounding like bebop, so it sounds like, you know, the jazz of the 50s. It was extremely sophisticated. Those guys were incredible players. If you've never listened to much bebop, listen to Charlie Parker, listen to Dizzy Gillespie, Sonny Stitt, people like that. They're just incredible, amazing, off-the-scale musicians. So one thing I can do, if I took my E minor sound, I can do like an encapsulation where I do D, B, C, C sharp. And that's a great sound, just that alone, you know. And then I've got this note, I can come chromatically down to it. Like I said, anything with a whole step, you can do a chromatic thing. So that's sort of a classic bebop line. All right, so now we're sounding very, very sophisticated on this chord. It's gone a long ways from... All right, I'll show you another Larry Carlton idea. And again, all of these you could take a long time just practicing and figuring out. So, you know, stop the video and go play yourself a little bit. But I could also take like an A minor 7 if I sort of was thinking in the... more of a minor sound, and then I can start from the D, then I can start from the G, and then I can start from... All right, you hear that sound? That's very Larry Carlton sounding. And again, sort of comes from the bebop school. All right, now that's going to take me into the last thing that I'm going to show you. This is a scale that you probably don't know, similar to the dominant pentatonic. You've heard it, but you might not have really worked it very much. There's a thing called the Coltrane Pentatonic. So the Coltrane Pentatonic, if I played the minor pentatonic over this A, I'm going to do root, second, minor, third, fifth, major, sixth, and back to the root. That would be a good scale to just sort of fiddle with. You've heard it in this sound before. So that's a really common sound. In the bigger scale then, you hear that sound. But I can also take that, and this is another concept that comes from like the bebop guys. If I took that same scale, but I went up a fifth, and I did the E minor scale, and incorporate that in with the sound. All right, and then this is going to take me to the very last thing. So the same thing where we're going up a fifth and going that Coltrane Pentatonic, I can also go up a fifth and do the melodic minor. And it gets this sound. So that flat 5, and it's a really, really nice sort of sound. It's the Lydian dominant. So you hear that? And those sounds, just to note, they're harder sounds to hear, so you sort of have to fight your way through them to hear like, oh, you know, that's a right note, not a wrong note. They need to be pretty well placed. So you put them in little phrases, and all of a sudden they sound pretty good. So anyhow, that probably is a lifetime's worth of exploration on a dominant 7th chord, but hopefully even if you just take away 1 or 2 of those concepts, it might really help you in your playing. It might help you sound a little bit more sophisticated than just wandering on the minor pentatonic over top of a dominant sound. And you know, even if you just do something as simple as that dominant pentatonic, you're going to sound a lot more sophisticated as you start to approach some changes on the dominant 7th chords. So hopefully that helped you out a little bit. And until next time, God bless.